Hey there everyone, Nubkeks here, and in today's video we're looking at the Elemental Shaman on the Shadowlands beta for World of Warcraft, a spec that has been reworked not once but twice here on the beta already. We're going to be looking at, of course, Enhancement and Resto Shaman over the next couple of days, and we've looked at several classes and specs already, and we'll be looking at every single class, every single spec on the Shadowlands beta over the next while here on the channel, so do stay tuned for all that content. Is it pronounced shaman or shaman? Anyway, I've no idea, so forgive me if I use multiple terms over the video. Anyway, let's dive in, let's check it out. Alright guys, and here we are in game. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take a look at the core gameplay, the core rotation of the Elemental Shaman, and this has been reworked not once but 2 times already on the beta, so this is actually quite different. So if you've been skipping this section of the video in previous videos because you're already familiar with the spec, well, it has changed, so I do encourage you to stick around and check it out. And then we'll look at like the purely new stuff then after that in the what's new section. So let's dive into it. Right, core rotation, the core rotation. First thing you're going to notice is that Maelstrom is gone. This was your builder spender resource for Ele Shaman in BFA. No more. This is no more. However, and they've had a couple of iterations on this, and they've ended up in a place that is actually very similar to that, but with now a buff called Fulmination, right? And the way it works is you can have up to 8 stacks of this. Your Lightning Bolt will generate 1 stack, your Lava Burst now generates 1 stack, and your Chain Lightning will generate 1 stack. Each time they overload, there we just saw an overload, that is our mastery, where our spells, Lightning Bolt, Ice Fury, Lava Burst, Chain Lightning, have a chance to trigger a second time, doing 85% normal damage. Well, that overload also generates a stack of Fulmination, which means that your mastery is actually really good now for generating Fulmination. It's more effective. Mastery is much more effective than it was in BFA, where I think it generated Maelstrom at half effectiveness. Now it generates Fulmination at, you know, the same effectiveness, so it's a big deal. So you generate with that. You can have up to 8 stacks, and whenever we use our spenders, then Earthshock or Earthquake, they consume all of your stacks, whether you have 1 stack, 4 stacks, 7 stacks, 8 stacks, doesn't matter. Whenever you use one of your spenders, it consumes them all. Earthshock is actually spammable now. You can cast this whenever you want to. Whenever you want to, you can Earthshock. Whereas it had a Maelstrom cost, I think, at BFA. It does an extra 62 nature damage per stack of Fulmination, so with 8 stacks, it's going to do an extra 480 damage. And see, Earthshock only does 260 damage. It's very low damage compared to a Lightning Bolt does 440. So, you know, 260 plus, what was it, 480 at this gear level, this level, that's like 740 damage. So 740 damage for a fully powered up Earthshock. Compared to 440 damage of a Lightning Bolt, it's not 2 Lightning Bolts worth. It's like a Lightning Bolt and 3/4 or something for that, which is, in my opinion, quite low in terms of tuning. Now, however, this is a new thing that they've just added in. You can see the tooltip doesn't even work right, but this now ties in with Earthquake as well. It actually reduces Earthquake's cast time by 20% per stack of Fulmination, and Earthquake will do 20% more damage for each stack of Fulmination. So one thing that's a little bit weird is this means, you know, you want 5 stacks of Fulmination to do your Earthquakes. What I found, though, in my testing, with at least in single target, was that you kind of want to consume Fulmination around 6 stacks, because with 6 stacks you can react to 6 stacks. Like, so for example right there, bit of a bummer, we're gonna waste some stacks there, unfortunately, because we overloaded her twice in a row. But because you have overloads increasing your Fulmination, if you're gonna cast at 7 stacks, you're gonna end up wasting some, which isn't ideal. Whereas if you consume at 6 stacks, you should be safe. Like right here, we're going to look to spend at 6, and it ended up actually being 7, and that's totally fine. But you roughly speaking get that idea. This does tie in with, I think, Blizzard's vision. You have some talents which are about consuming 6 stacks of Fulmination. You have some legendaries which are about consuming 6 stacks of Fulmination. I think, though, that there is something of a disconnect right now because, again, Earthquake, you kind of want to consume Earthquake with 5 stacks because that's what makes it instant cast. And obviously, Earthquake, you can spam it, but it has a cast time. I actually have a stack of Fulmination. Let me get rid of it. I can't actually... Never mind. I can't cancel it. I can't get rid of it. But Earthquake has a 2.8 second cast. Yeah, I mean, basically, you're always going to want to cast Earthquake with 5 stacks of Fulmination, minimum 5 to 6, to get those instant casts out. What this means is that Fulmination actually feels much more impactful in AoE. It feels really powerful in AoE and really important, whereas in single target, it's not that great. I actually did some testing And what I found was in single target against a target dummy that consuming my fulmination properly with Earthshock in single target, the Earthshock plus the fulmination charges did about 10% of my damage. So if you ignored this mechanic entirely in single target, you'd only lose 10% damage. And in fact, you wouldn't even lose 10% damage because you could simply fill in with lightning bolts instead of those Earthshocks, which would probably do, again, slightly longer cast time than Earthshock, which is instant, so shorter GCD and all that. But I'd say, roughly speaking, you probably lose about 5% damage if you just ignored this mechanic entirely, which is a bit strange in single target. But obviously in AoE, getting those Earthquakes out is super, super impactful. One thing to note about AoE as well is that in BFA, Chain Lightning would scale the Maelstrom generation based off of how many targets it chained to. In Shadowlands right now, Chain Lightning generates 1 stack of Fulmination so long as it chains 1 time. And whether it chains to whether it's hitting then 2 targets, whether it's 3, 4, 5, it does not matter. It generates 1 stack every time. If it overloads, that overload generates another 1 stack. So overall, this does mean, it means that your generation of fulmination is more steady in AoE. It's a lot more steady. It's not going to vary depending on the target sizes, but it is on the whole overall slightly slower than it was in BFA. So do bear that in mind. It's slightly slower than it was in BFA. Okay. And then, of course, the other core part of a rotation, which is actually, this is going to be nicely improved. You have Lava Burst, which does 448 fire damage. This always critically strikes if you put it on someone with Flame Shock. Now, this is our core dot. This has a 6-second cooldown, still, unfortunately. This has been nerfed from BFA. Where it now only lasts for 18 seconds, down from 24, which is rough, which means that it's easy to maintain it on 2 targets, but it becomes very stressful to maintain it on 3 targets, and you cannot physically get above 3 targets without talents and Covenant abilities and stuff like that. It also ticks every 3 seconds now instead of every 2 seconds, which means less Lava Surge procs. Lava Surge, your Flame Shock damage over time, is a 15% chance to reset remaining cooldown on Lava Burst and make your next Lava Burst instant. And there you go. We put all this stuff, this is your core rotation. We put this stuff together. What are we going to do? Let's say in single target, we're going to go in, we're going to Flame Shock, we're going to Lava Burst on cooldown, and then we're going to fill in with Lightning Bolt. When we get 6 stacks of Fulmination, we're going to spend it with Earthshock. And a Lightning Bolt, we're going to go into our Lava Burst and reapply Flame Shock, spend our Lava Burst procs, and spend our Fulmination with Earthshock. Very simple, very straightforward. Without talents, quite dull. Quite dull. But there you are, that's what it's doing in Legendaries. But those Legendaries and talents and stuff do spice it up quite a bit. In AoE, let's say we're going into AoE then. We're going to still use up to on 3 targets. I actually found it's worth using Lava Burst. Right, so we're still going to use Lava Burst. We're going to attempt to multi-dot with Flame Shock. And we're going to fill in then with our Chain Lightnings. We're going to consume our Chain Lightnings to cast Earthquake at 5 stacks at least. 5 to 6 stacks. So here you can see, for example, I can't physically keep up multiple, just because of cast times overriding and stuff. I can't actually keep up that stuff. And there you are. And we're going to Chain Lightning. And that's, roughly speaking, the rhythm of it. Let's look at what is new then, guys. What is new for the Elemental Shaman? What is new here? So I already covered this with the core rotation. If you want to learn about Fulmination and you skip to this part, so this is replacing your Maelstrom, how that's affecting the core rotation, please do go check out that core rotation stuff. It might be a bit slow, a bit basic, but I think it should hopefully provide a clear explanation of what's going on there. What is new? Number 1, actually, your Fire Elemental has changed, right? And this guy actually seems to be bugged. I don't think he's attacking target dummies. Yeah, no. So he has a peace treaty with the target dummies, so he won't actually attack him. What he does, though, while he's active, and he should be attacking, while he's active, Flame Shock is going to do damage 25% faster, and newly applied Flame Shocks are going to last 100% longer. So this is really going to help you with multi-dotting with Flame Shock. It's going to give you more Lava Surge procs and feel pretty good. Now, it's not perhaps as good as it sounds because, of course, Flame Shock duration has been nerfed to a baseline 18 seconds. in Shadowlands, so it goes up to 36 seconds dot with the Fire Elemental here, with Fire Elemental buff. And again, because it's ticking every 3 seconds instead of every 2 seconds like it did in BFA, in Shadowlands, it's gonna, 25% off, it's gonna be ticking kind of at BFA rate, let's say, at the same speed that BFA did with this guy up. It's certainly a weird one. Like, in a sense, the extra duration on the Flame Shocks is not necessarily that useful in AoE, for example, because, well, stuff might just die. So do bear that in mind. Of course, there is the Storm Elemental that has a totally different bonus. So that sort of differentiates them a little bit. But we'll come to that in the talent section in a hot minute here. In a hot minute. We also have another couple of things. So, what are these things, these glowy things spinning around me? Well, this is Flame Tongue Weapon on my weapon. Imbue your weapon with the element of fire for 1 hour, causing each of your attacks to do 7 additional fire damage. Considering that Lightning Bolt does 440 damage, I don't think this is particularly relevant for anything, apart from having a nice, cool, glowy thing on your mace or whatever. You also have Lightning Shield now ties into Fulmination, where melee attackers have a 100% chance to suffer 10 nature damage, but importantly, have a 100% chance to generate a stack of Fulmination. So for world, like, not really relevant for raids at all, or for that stuff, but in world content and solo content in PvP, you are going to generate extra Fulmination when you are melee attacked, which is kind of cool because that ties into your instant cast spell. So very relevant for PvP. Now that being said, one downside, you can only have one elemental shield active. So for example, if I put Earth Shield on myself, let me actually do that. Put Earth Shield over here. If I put Earth Shield on myself, it does remove Lightning Shield. If I put Lightning Shield on, it removes the Earth Shield. So do bear that in mind. Do bear that in mind. You can have multiple shields on, which is a mild bummer. Okay, what else do we have that's new? Oh, one very nice thing here. Spirit Walker's Grace. This is now baseline, which is phenomenal. A 2-minute cooldown. Call upon the guidance of the spirits for 15 seconds, permitting movement while casting shaman spells. And this is also castable while casting. So this is a very pleasant addition to your mobility as the shaman. Cast while moving. Absolutely fantastic. What's not to love there? Another thing we have coming is Chain Heal. You now have Chain Heal as an Ellie Shaman. That's a 2.3 second cast, heals a friendly target for 1,600, and jumps to heal the 2 most injured nearby allies. Healing is reduced by 30% with each jump. So let's see, it should jump to this. Maybe it won't jump to this guy. Yeah, it'll go down onto him. So cool. I mean, Chain Heal, it's there. It's there. I think it's a bit weird because we're not in parties and stuff like that in terms of bouncing around. Compared to your Healing Surge does more healing, 1,700. And it has a faster cast time. But this is okay. It's not as good. This is better for the Enhancement Shaman, the new Enhancement Shaman, but still kind of a nice little perk to have there. I'm not sure when you'd use it too much. I guess in some crazy situations in Mythic Plus, or perhaps in PvP, it could be useful. I feel like Healing Surge is a little bit better for the LA Shaman, though, just because it's faster. We also have, this one's very nice, Healing Stream Totem. 30-second cooldown, instant cast, drop down your totem. Summons a totem at your feet for 15 seconds. That heals an injured party or raid member within 40 yards for about 300 every 1.8 seconds. So this is pretty nice. He's going to do a nice little bit of healing. It's not much. The pleasant thing about this is because it is instant cast, it's, whenever you do need to move, and let's say you need to do a small bit of movement and you don't have any particular instant cast, I can like drop a, let's wait for the cooldown. I'm fighting this guy, whatever. Flame Shock's on cooldown. I want to move. I can drop Healing Stream. I can drop a Frost Shock. And you can get quite a bit of movement in. It's like an extra thing to drop in while you're moving. And I think it's just nice. It's really fun to drop a totem. And it actually does a nice little bit of healing. So it is a very positive thing, I think. Very nice to have there. We also have, yes, Primal Strike. An instant weapon strike that causes 43 physical damage. Again, this is a bit weird. You can spam this one. Definitely strange, I guess. I mean, I guess if you're like kicked, like if you're nature locked or fire locked or something in PvP, you could at least spam Primal Strike for a bit of extra damage. But again, like 43 physical damage, it is almost no damage. So again, probably something useful for PvP. In PvE though, like I don't even have this on my bars, and I'm not going to care because I'm going to be casting spells at ranged. But I mean, it's there, so that is something to note. For talents, though, we do have several, in fact, many talent changes. And I will say that, yeah, I like to show you these talents and then provide commentary after. But I'm just going to warn you in advance that some of these talents are pretty garbage. They're pretty terrible. So level 50, let's go through all of them because pretty much everything has been changed. Earthen Rage actually is still the same, so it's just, you know, you're going to just passively do some damage over time. Cool. Echo of the Elements is still at level 15. Despite going through 2 reworks now in the beta, they've not made this baseline. There you go. And we have a new talent, though, called Static Discharge. 30-second cooldown. Discharge excess energy from your lightning shield, doing 43 nature damage to an enemy within 40 yards every half a second for 3 seconds. And it does prioritize targets with your Flame Shock on them, so let's fire it off here. Gonna do these little lightning bolt zaps. Yeah, that's it. That's what that's gonna do. So, for example, that Static Discharge 1 cast did a whopping 300 damage. So that is 3/4 of a lightning bolt is extra damage on a 30-second cooldown right now. So you can give up having 2 charges of Lava Burst, which are hitting for as guaranteed crits against a Flame Shock target. Like, Lava Bursts are hitting for 1,100 damage. So yeah, this one tuning pending, but not particularly exciting, I don't think. At level 25 then, we have Aftershock. Now only works with Earthshock. Earthshock has a 25% chance not to consume any stacks of Fulmination. So this is pretty underwhelming because, of course, in AoE, I want to spend my Fulmination on Earthquake, and this has 0 interaction with that, so that's a bummer. Echoing Shock, the only currently good talent, I think, on this talent row. The only good talent on this talent row. 30-second cooldown. This one's really fun, actually. Shock the target for 400 elemental damage and create an ancestral echo, causing your next direct damage or direct healing spell to be cast a second time for 1 second later for free. Now, this does have a couple of traps to it. Number 1, direct damage spells. Unfortunately, you cannot use Echoing Shock to duplicate an Earthquake. Doesn't work. You can use Echoing Shock to duplicate an Earth Shock. However, as I showed you guys, in fact, let me generate this stuff right here, right now. As I showed you guys when we were looking at the core rotation, right? Core rotation. Let me generate enough of this, right? We're going to be consuming it around 6 stacks. Fulmination and Earthshock. So Earthshock actually crit there, and Fulmination. So with a critical hit, that did about 1,000 damage. The thing is, Lava Burst actually hits harder than this. Lava Burst does more damage, and is because it's a guaranteed crit. So on average, you're actually better off using this on Lava Burst, not on Earthshock. On top of that, it's not actually going to duplicate the Earthshock and the Fulmination. No. It will fire off the first Earthshock. The Earthshock consumes your Fulmination, and then the Echoing Shock will duplicate the Earthshock, but it will not duplicate the Fulmination consumption. So you'll just get a second cast for 260 damage. So again, the decision in single target is, do I want the guaranteed crit doing 1,100 damage, or do I want an Earthshock doing 260 damage? Pretty terrible. One very good interaction this does have is with Stormkeeper, so this is pretty phenomenal. So if I Stormkeeper here, and I do this, if I fire off my lightning bolts, it's going to duplicate the lightning bolts, and they are going to be Stormkeeper infused lightning bolts. So you have some weird stuff happening there. Again, I feel like it's still quite work in progress. You can duplicate Stormkeeper lightning bolts and Stormkeeper chain lightnings, which are, awesome. Okay, Stormkeeper ran out. But you can't duplicate fulminated things. You can't duplicate Earthshocks. It's a bit weird. But yeah, still a cool talent. Elemental Blast then is here. Returning Elemental Blast. I feel like, again, this has not been updated. This has not been updated, I think, for this newest rework. Here's what it does. 1.8 second cast, so the same as a lightning bolt. 12-second cooldown. Harness the raw power of the elements, doing about 500 elemental damage, and increasing your crit strike, haste, or mastery by 60 for 10 seconds. The problem is this second bit. Elemental Blast consumes all stacks of Fulmination to do extra nature damage to your target. So, in theory, in single target, without considering the Legendaries and other talents that work when you consume specifically 6 or more stacks of Fulmination, just with the baseline stuff, this works well in single target. It's a better Earthshock. It does more damage than Earthshock, so it's a more efficient way to spend your Fulmination, to consume your Fulmination, which works fine. It's going to give you those stats. So in single target, without Legendaries and other talents that need 6 stacks, you can just use this on cooldown and it's good. In AoE, this is actively bad. Why? Because in AoE, I need my Fulmination to cast Earthquake, and Earthquake is my main damage source, my biggest damage source in AoE. If I want to use Elemental Blast, it's going to suck up all that Fulmination stacks and just get in the way. So it becomes really awkward where you have to spend your Fulmination with Earthquake and then cast Elemental Blast afterwards. Which means you're not going to have the Elemental Blast stats up for the Earthquake when you cast Earthquake. It's just really, really clunky. This made sense with the first version of the rework, where you had Fulmination, which was purely Lightning Bolt and Earthshock. And then you had a new thing called Seismic Thunder, which was Chain Lightning Earthquake. So Elemental Blast fit into that because it was fitting into the purely single target thing. I think this needs to be updated for now the fact that Fulmination affects Earthquake, because this feels so bad in AoE. So right now, you're kind of just going Echoing Shock because it's good single target with Stormkeeper Lightning Bolts. It's good in AoE with Stormkeeper Chain Lightning. And then, you know, when Stormkeeper's on cooldown, you do one cast of it on a lava burst, and it feels okay. Level 30 is, I believe, still the same. Level 35 is slightly, so Master of the Elements I think is still the same. Storm Elemental, this is actually kind of interesting because it's so different from Fire Elemental, because Fire Elemental is now affecting Flame Shock, making Flame Shocks last longer and tick faster and therefore get more lava bursts. Storm Elemental doesn't have that benefit, but instead, every time you cast Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning, the cast time of Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning are reduced by 3%, stacking up to 20 times, so total, you know, maximum stacks of 60% speed reduction on those spells. So it's definitely kind of interesting one there, an interesting tweak. I mean, you guys that are more into Elemental Shaman can sit down and actually test it out and see which one feels better. And then Liquid Magma Totem is still there. Level 40 is, I believe, still the same. Level 45 is where things get, again, a bit work in progress, I think. So we have Surge of Power. In my opinion, Surge of Power is what for me made the spec feel a lot better. Consuming 6 stacks of Fulmination enhances your next spell cast within 15 seconds. Flame Shock. The next cast will also apply Flame Shock to one additional target within 8 yards of the target. Lightning Bolt. Your next cast will cause an additional 1 to 3 elemental overloads. Lava Burst. Reduce the cooldown of Fire Elemental by 6 seconds, or Frost Shock freezes the target in place for 6 seconds. So in single target, this feels amazing, right? Because Earthshock and Fulmination are so underwhelming in single target. This actually makes it feel good. It makes it feel like it has an actual purpose. So getting, you know, in 2-target cleave, getting Flame Shock up on a couple of targets. Fantastic. In particular with Lightning Bolt. Let's actually go here. Let me show you. Like, this is really good for Lightning Bolt, because Lightning Bolt doing more overloads, this really speeds everything up, because each of those overloads is going to generate Fulmination, so it makes the spec flow way faster. So, like, check this out. I'm going to spend this on Lightning Bolts. And look at that. Like, I got a whole bunch more stacks, so we're getting into our next Earthshock much faster. It's awesome, right? We're going to spend our Earthshock. In this case, we're actually going to Surge of Power with the Lava Burst, reduce the cooldown of Fire Elemental. So yeah, this one I think is really neat. Really fun thing to play around. One problem right now, this does not work. This does not work for Earthquake. No, sir. So this is a dead talent right now in AoE. So you will notice here we go. Are you ready? 7 stacks, 8 stacks in fact. Earthquake, no Surge of Power. So this does not work right now with Earthquake. This only works with Earthshock. So with the default Shaman, in AoE, like 3+ targets, this is doing essentially nothing, which sucks. Primal Elementalist is still the same. And Ice Fury is still the same, unfortunately. So Ice Fury, you throw... sorry, I got itchy nose, allergies. Hurl Frigid Ice at the target, doing 340 frost damage, causing your next 4 Frost Shocks to do 200% increased damage. So it's super fun spell. Unfortunately, this, again, has no interaction at all with Fulmination. 0 interaction with Fulmination. It does a bit of damage itself. The Frost Shocks are going to do a lot of damage, so really nice for mobility, really nice single target damage, but again, does not tie into the Fulmination resource at all, meaning it feels kind of weird. So again, needless to say, I'm expecting them to go back through this tree and like buff Static Discharge, probably make Aftershock Effect Earthquake, make Elemental Blast maybe not consume Fulmination, make Ice Fury do generate Fulmination, make Surge of Power work with Earthquake. There's a lot of stuff here that seems like it's just... they're in a little bit of a rush to get this finished, and they haven't made it all mesh together. At level 50, then Unlimited Power, you get Haste. Stormkeeper, again, feels phenomenal. This feels really good. The Overloads, it feels even better with this new system because the Overloads are even more valuable for Fulmination. So, I mean, it's quite glorious in AoE. I'm going to go in here. Let's pretend this is AoE. We're going to Stormkeeper. We're going to get a Flame Shock up. We're going to Echoing Shock. We're going to fire off the Echoing Shocked. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. All of this. Another Stormkeeper Chain Lightning. Oh, that is juicy. Earthquake. Oh, so good, man. Like, that burst AoE damage is so dirty. It is so satisfying, right? So satisfying. Because the Stormkeeper charged up yourself with lightning. Your next 2 lightning bolts do 150% more damage. Or it makes your next 2 lightning bolts or chain lightnings instant cast and trigger elemental overload on every target. Like, oh my god, you get so many stacks of fulmination, so you can just spam out the earthquakes. You can echoing shock the Stormkeeper chain lightnings, and it gives you so much burst. You're throwing out like 3 or 4 earthquakes in a go, and you just do a ton of burst damage. Like, it's so good. I think we only cast earthquake twice there, but like the chain lightning, such a beautiful chunk of burst damage. That is so satisfying. Super satisfying. So that's the nice perk of it. But yeah, anyway, that is they are all of the talents that you're getting with the Ele Shaman. For your conduits for the Elemental Shaman, the way this works, you'll have a soul bind in Shadowlands. I'm not going to cover the soul binds in this video, but you can see an example in the background and sort of the path you can take through the tree. There are endurance conduits, which buff survivability, finesse, which buff your utility, and potency, which are going to buff your damage. First up, let's look at the endurance ones for the Elemental Shaman. You have Astral Protection first. Reincarnation's cooldown is reduced by 3 minutes, and reincarnating instantly grants you Astral Shift. This can go up to 10-minute cooldown reduction. So this one is fairly underwhelming. I'm not sure, I don't even know if you can use reincarnation in Arena. It does not get reset per raid boss fight. Even with a cooldown reduction, like reincarnation every 20 minutes, it's like you're going to get 1, maybe 2 off in a Mythic Plus. So I don't know. This one doesn't appeal to me too much, though. I mean, the Astral Shift perk with reincarnation is pretty huge. Like, this could actually end up being like BIS for progress boss fights and stuff, because it makes reincarnation much safer. But yeah. Next up is Refreshing Waters. Your Healing Surge is 15% more effective on yourself. This can scale up to 30% more effective on yourself. So that's really, really nice. A bunch of extra self-healing, always going to be pretty good. Vital Accretion then is next. Your Earth Elemental increases your maximum health by 20%. This goes up to 40% bonus maximum health. So this one I think is much more enticing than, for example, the Reincarnation one, which is so irregular. I mean, it's still, Earth Elemental is still a 5-minute cooldown, but this does make you super tanky when Earth Ele is out, which is kind of awesome. So potent in PvP, definitely lovely in Mythic Plus, like when you're popping Earth Elemental out, when you got a big dangerous pull, that extra max health is fantastic. And, you know, Earth Ele is kind of weird in raids, but hey, 40% more maximum health is going to feel really good, especially seeing as you are very much lacking defensive CDs as an Ele Shaman. It's a bummer that this is on a 5-minute cooldown, but I think it's still a pretty positive thing. Nice chunk of extra max health. For the Finesse conduits then, for the Ele Shaman, we have Crippling Hex. Enemies affected by your Hex do 8% reduced damage for 8 seconds after Hex is removed. This scales up to for 15 seconds after Hex is removed. So this is very powerful for PvP, maybe has some uses in PvE, but it's mostly, I think, a PvP thing. Spiritual Resonance is next. For Elemental, your Bloodlust, or any similar effects of Time Warp or Heroism, will give you 4 seconds of Spirit Walker's Grace. And this can scale up to 18 seconds, actually, which is quite nice. So this one's very nifty, you know, just be able to cast spells on the move for, you know, at max rank, 18 seconds of that Bloodlust. Pretty nifty, actually, pretty nifty. Just helps make sure that you get guaranteed value out of that Bloodlust. I mean, oftentimes you're Bloodlusting on pull in PvE and raid situation, and there might not be too much stuff happening for those first 18 seconds of pull. But definitely in Mythic Plus, for example, where you're going to be Bloodlusting on a tough boss and there can be mechanics, or tough packs and there can be mechanics, a welcome addition there. Thunderous Paws is next. Ghost Wolf increases your movement speed by an additional 10% for the first 3 seconds. This can only occur once every 60 seconds. This actually scales up to 40% increased move speed for the first 3 seconds. I think this is phenomenal. So a very powerful tool for kiting in PvP, but for PvE, definitely a huge weakness of the Ele Shaman is like, okay, like we can cast while moving now with Spirit Walker's Grace baseline. That's really good. We can go into Ghost Wolf to get 30% move speed. You know, that's good. But like our burst mobility is very low. Like if there's a meteor landing on your location, get out of there now. As an Ele Shaman, that feels pretty rough, you know, compared to a mage who just simply blinks away and feels pretty good about it. Ellie Shaman definitely feels slow. This, though, gives you that burst mobility to dodge those mechanics, to like get out quickly and get back casting and doing damage as quickly as possible. So I'm a really, really big fan of this one. And then we have our Totemic Surge. Final finesse conduit here. The cooldowns of Tremor Totem, Earthbind Totem, and Capacitor Totem are reduced by 1 second. Now, terrible at rank 1, but at rank the maximum rank, it actually lowers them by 15 seconds, which is amazing. So Tremor Totem goes from a 1 minute cooldown to a 45 second cooldown. Earthbind Totem actually goes from 30 seconds to 15. And Capacitor, again, from a 1 minute cooldown to 45 second cooldown. Of course, you could take the Capacitor Totem talent to make that even better. But I think that certainly at the higher rank, this is really, really nice. Like just buffing those utility totems is going to feel pretty good. I mean, on the whole, definitely the finesse conduits, I think, for the Shaman are looking really solid. For the potency conduits for the Elemental Shaman, then there are 4. First up, we have Call of Flame. Storm Elemental or Fire Elemental lasts 15% longer. That scales up to 30% bonus. So, roughly speaking, 30% bonus. You're looking at roughly around an extra like 9 or 10 seconds. In other words, instead of lasting 30 seconds, it's going to last about 40 seconds. So pretty nice, you know, kind of nifty in that it's going to sync up with Bloodlust, which I think is quite appropriate, you know. Shaman is the classic Bloodlust class. Kind of nice that your big cooldown will sync up with that. And more benefit, you know, it's pretty good. Definitely with Storm Elemental, because you're stacking up the stacks of speeding up your lightning cast, your lightning bolt, chain lightning. That's stacking up, so extra duration is very powerful for that, and it's just a nice perk for Fire Elemental as well. Earth and Sky is next. Earth Shock and Elemental Blast damage are increased by 7% for each stack of Fulmination they discharge. This goes up to 14%. This is really underwhelming actually, because Earthshock does so little damage. Again, Earthshock does about, like by default, does about half the damage of a lightning bolt, so 14% extra damage on that Earthshock. This really needs a lot of tuning to actually feel viable. This just feels meh. And obviously in AoE, you're spending Fulmination on Earthquake, so yeah, I expect them to revisit this one. It's pretty garbage. High Voltage is next. Lightning Bolt has a 30% chance to generate an extra stack of Fulmination. This goes up to a 60% bonus. So this one is definitely fun. Definitely fun. It lets you play, you know, in single target, you're going to generate a lot more stacks of Fulmination. So that's, you know, the one default from Lightning Bolt, an extra whenever it overcharges, and 60% chance to get an extra one as well. So that's really, really pleasant. Again, it's going to tie in well to some of the legendaries, or tie in really well to the Surge of Power talent, which I really highlighted as a highlight of the Ellie Shaman, where it's consuming 6 stacks of Fulmination with Earthshock gives you really nice buffs to play with. So this one is cool. Again, disappointing this does not affect Chain Lightning, so that sucks. I would love to see that affect Chain Lightning, but certainly for single target, it's going to feel nice, although you're going to really rely on sort of external things to make this feel good, because, again, Fulmination with the default kit right now feels very underwhelming. Then finally, Shake the Foundations. Casting Earthquake has a 15% chance to instantly cast Chain Lightning at a random enemy in the Earthquake. This goes up to 30%. So this one is, again, super. Gotta love it. The Chain Lightning is going to generate a stack of Fulmination if it overloads. Every time it overloads, it's another stack of Fulmination. It's going to get you to your next Earthquake faster. So it's just going to speed up. It's a nice little bit of burst damage, like a small bit, but it's nice. And then it speeds up the Fulmination generation in AoE, which feels really, really good, because that's where Fulmination actually feels impactful. More Earthquakes, more fun, more good. Let's go. For the legendary powers for the Shaman, there are 4 General Shaman legendaries available to all specs, and then there are 4 elemental specific legendary powers. First up, let's look at the general ones. We have Ancestral Reminder. Heroism or Bloodlust or any similar effect lasts an additional 20 seconds on you, and you gain an extra 10% haste from any Heroism or Bloodlust type effect. So quite nice, you know. Means Bloodlust is going to be a 60-second buff, and you're going to get 40% haste instead of 30%. So definitely a nice little perk. Feels kind of good. I mean, it's just, you know, I don't know if this is necessarily going to work out to be the best one. It certainly could be in some circumstances, but it's always good to have that there as an option. It feels appropriate as, you know, the classic Bloodlust spec. So kind of cool. Deep Tremor Stone, is next. Earth Elemental has a permanent Earthquake attached to it. So this one is quite quite odd. I mean, maybe it ends up being okay in AoE. We'll have to see. I think it could be very nice for solo play. This could be pretty good. Earthquake, of course, has the chance to knock enemies down, so it does provide some CC and stuff like that. So this could be okay for some solo play like Torghast. We'll see. Seems a bit quirky though. I'm not sure if it's going to see much use out of that. Next up is Deeply Rooted Elements. For Elemental, casting Lava Burst has a 5% chance to activate Ascendance for 6 seconds. Ascendance for the Ele Shaman is by default a 3-minute cooldown with 15-second duration. That replaces Chain Lightning with Lava Beam and removes the cooldown on Lava Burst, and it increases the damage of Lava Burst by an amount equal to your critical strike chance. So this seems pretty good. I haven't been able to test this, so I'm not sure if you cast the Lava Burst, you go into Ascendance before it hits, and then that Lava Burst does more damage, which would be a pretty nice perk. But I mean, that's going to be pretty cool. It's going to mean whenever you Lava Burst, there's a 5% chance that you just go into Lava Burst spam for about 3 or 4 GCDs after that, which I think is going to be pretty satisfying. So I actually really like the look of this one. I think this one seems like a lot of fun. And I do think that you cast Lava Burst probably frequently enough, certainly when there's a couple of targets that you've multi-dotted with Flame Shock, and certainly when you're Fire Elemental, if you're spec'd into Fire Elemental, when Fire Elemental is increasing the duration of the dots and the tick rate and stuff, you might get relatively decent procs on this. We'll see how it actually works out in practice, but I think this one looks quite fun. And then finally, Chains of Devastation. Casting Chain Heal makes your next Chain Lightning instant cast. Casting Chain Lightning makes your next Chain Heal instant cast. This one is actually okay, I think, for Mythic Plus and possibly for PvP. This one could feel pretty good. Definitely in Mythic Plus, you are casting Chain Lightning all the time. So being able to throw out instant cast Chain Heals to help your group, I think this one is going to be very satisfying to play with as a Shaman, and that's going to feel like you can contribute a good source of utility. And in particular, this has a very, very nice synergy with the Kyrian Covenant ability, which we'll be taking a look at in the next section. So there you are. For the Elemental specific legendaries, we have 4. First up, we have Skybreaker's Fiery Demise. Flame Shock, damage over time, critical strikes, reduce the cooldown of Fire Elemental or Storm Elemental by 1 second, and Flame Shock has a 30% increased critical strike chance. So, that's kind of nice, just more uptime on your elementals. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it gets you into those things a little bit faster, which is kind of cool. For Elemental Equilibrium, dealing direct fire damage increases the damage of your next frost spell by 30%. Dealing frost damage increases the damage of your next nature spell by 25%. And dealing nature damage increases the damage of your next fire spell by 20%. So this is intriguing. Obviously, this matches up with the talent we have, what's it called? Elemental Master of the Elements, where casting Lava Burst increases the damage for your next nature, physical, or frost spell by 20%. So interesting stuff happening there. Again, I believe that the initial feedback, the initial analysis from the Theory Crafter guys is that you do not want to actually intentionally play around this, that this is just something you will take and you'll do your rotation as normal, and these things will just sort of naturally happen and buff up your damage. Their analysis, I believe, is that if you actually try to play with this one, that you're going to cast the wrong spells at the wrong time too often and won't actually gain much DPS. So do bear that in mind. This is probably most likely going to be a passive thing. Obviously, it does potentially make the Ice Fury talent, though, much better. Good synergy with Ice Fury, which weaves Frost Shock into your core rotation. Of course, in PvP, you're going to be Frost Shocking quite a lot anyway, so this could work very, very well in PvP, just even more naturally. Of course, for PvE, we have to hope that Ice Fury gets Fulmination integrated into it, otherwise it's a little bit clunky. But there you go, Elemental Equilibrium. I think it's fine. Echoes of the Great Sundering is next, and this is where we get interesting with the 6 stacks of Fulmination. When you consume 6 or more stacks of Fulmination with Earth Shock, your next Earthquake will be instant cast and deal 6% additional damage. So this is obviously super good. I don't know, like I said, I really expect them to come back and retweak this, though. I really do, because yeah, I think this was tying into the old system where Fulmination was just purely single target, just Lightning Bolt and just Earth Shock. And then with Earthquake, you were working with Seismic Thunder stacks from Chain Lightning. I think that this was very much designed for that old system, because right now, basically what this does is, why ever cast Earthquake with my Fulmination? You put on this Legendary, and you always cast Earth Shock, and then you follow up with Earthquake, probably. Although, that being said, Fulmination does increase the damage of Earthquake, right? So, I'm not sure. Now I stop and I think about it. I'm not actually sure. That's a weird one, right? That's a weird one. I guess this is more of a single target or like 2-target cleave thing then. Because like with 5 stacks of Fulmination, which is what's making Earthquake instant cast, it makes Earthquake do double damage. You get 20% per stack. So giving that up for an Earth Shock and then Earthquake doing 6% more damage. I don't know. I feel like this one's weird. I think they need to revisit this one probably. This seems just very strange. Very strange. I don't know. That's all I'm going to say. I don't really know. The other one that sort of ties into this is the Windspeaker's Lava Resurgence. When you consume 6 or more stacks of Fulmination with Earth Shock, gain Lava Surge and increase the damage of your next Lava Burst by 6%. So I think this one is actually pretty nice, right? So you're going to basically all the time in single target be consuming Fulmination with 6 stacks with your Earth Shock. So that basically means you can guarantee a proc of your Lava Surge, which is kind of fun. Kind of makes the Echo of the Elements talent at level 15 mandatory, I would think. Although, let's be honest, it kind of is mandatory anyway if you want to actually have fun with the spec. So yeah, interesting one there. Of course, it makes it kind of this, it's a little bit weird, isn't it? Where in the sense that you're not excited about spending Fulmination because it actually does meaningful damage. You're excited because it gives you a stack of Lava Surge and that's your source of meaningful damage. Kind of weird, but there you are. They are the Shaman Legendary. For your Covenant abilities as the Shaman, we have the Kyrians up first. The signature ability for the Kyrians is Summon Steward. He gives you a File of Serenity. This has 3 charges. It's like a health stone, right? You can use 1 per combat, 1 charge per combat. It restores 15% of your health and removes all curses, diseases, poisons, and bleed effects. So this is actually quite nice, right? So you can cleanse spirit, you can remove curses on an 8-second cooldown as a shaman. But like if there's nasty curses going out, you can decurse one of your buddies, and you can use this to decurse yourself. But more importantly, like diseases, poisons, bleed effects, these can be pretty nasty. And definitely you don't have a lot of defensives at all as an Ellie Shaman, and you don't have the best mobility. So anything that's going to add to that is going to be very welcome, I think. Your Covenant ability then is the Vesper Totem. Summon a totem at the target location for 30 seconds. This has a 1-minute cooldown and 40-yard range. It's instant cast. And your next 3 damage spells or abilities will cause the totem to radiate about 50% spell power, arcane damage to up to 6 enemies near the totem. And your next 3 healing spells will heal 6 allies near the totem for 100% of spell power. The nice thing about this is you can move it around, so you can recast you can recast it, repress the button to retarget the ability, and that is off GCD, which is fantastic. So that's really good to see. It is off GCD. There is also, by the way, a potency conduit that improves this called Elysian Dirge. Vesper Totem is 100% more effective against the target nearest to it, and that can actually scale up to 200% more effective. So I think the conduit definitely is important. It's very important because this is what I think rounds this ability out. So by default, this ability is fantastic for AoE damage. It's a really nice source of AoE damage. It's very easy to use, very straightforward. It's easy to place the totem, it's easy to move the totem, get it on top of the enemies you want it on top of, and pulse good, solid AoE damage. Also nice, actually, because one thing I was curious and I did test out, is that dropping your Healing Stream Totem, which is the instant cast 30-second cooldown, does actually trigger a tick of the heal, which is quite nice because it's very easy. Like while you're moving around in the dungeon, staying mobile, you can use the instant cast Healing Stream Totem, drop that, and that can actually trigger one of the healing pulses. And the healing pulses are actually quite significant. One issue for the Ellie Shaman, I would say, is that triggering the other 2 healing pulses, that becomes much more difficult. Like you're gonna have to give up. You're going to have to give up some of your GCDs to cast Healing Surge or to cast Chain Heal, which does feel a little bit bad. So bear that in mind. That being said, I think this would be really good in PvP. This is going to be great in Mythic Plus. Really nice utility to bring, good AoE damage and also good healing. It does synergize pretty well, I think, certainly in Mythic Plus with the Legendary as well, where your Chain Lightning makes your next Chain Heal instant cast. So that becomes a very easy flow in AoE. Drop the Vesper Totem and you're casting Chain Lightning in AoE. Just weave in some Chain Heals too for instant cast. Again, more mobility there and fire off the healing from this, which is awesome. And like I said, the Conduit makes this good in single target, which is important because I think without the Conduit, this is like amazing in AoE, but in single target, it would be really underwhelming, which would suck. I think this is a really solid Conduit. This feels really good, straightforward, easy to use, powerful, good AoE, Conduit it up so it's good single target too. Yeah, this is a great one. Vesper Totem, it's a good one. Next up, we have the Venthyr. Their signature ability is Door of Shadows. This has a 1.5 second cast time, 35-yard range, and a 1-minute cooldown. You went through the shadows appearing at the targeted location. This is a point-and-click teleport, which is awesome. Again, one of the problems I mentioned for Elemental Shaman is your burst mobility is terrible. Like, you pop into Ghost Wolf and you have to run there at 30% increased movement speed. It's terrible. This gives you that instant big movement ability, which is great. Like, you can teleport over, laser beams in boss fights. You can teleport over pools of lava on the floor, maybe some Mythic Plus skips. This is a really great ability for the Elemental Shaman. This is fantastic. The Venthyr Covenant ability is unfortunately extremely undertuned right now. So this is Chain Harvest. It has a 1.5 minute cooldown and a 2.5 second cast time, 40-yard range. You send a wave of anima at the target, which then jumps to additional nearby targets, doing 45% of spell power shadow damage to up to 5 enemies and restoring 300% spell power health to up to 5 allies. For each target critically struck, the cooldown of Chain Harvest is reduced by 5 seconds. Tying in with that cooldown reduction, the conduit, the potency conduit you can take, is called Lavish Harvest, which increases the critical strike chance of Chain Harvest by 10% or up to bonus 17%. So this is basically like super duper chain heal or super duper chain lightning. A couple of problems. Problem number one, the biggest problem, by far the biggest problem, is this does very low damage. This does not do much damage at all. So that is really underwhelming. It's going to feel like not super duper chain lightning, but kind of like slightly stronger chain lightning. That's probably worth pressing, but maybe not too much. The other issue is that it obviously does not synergize with Fulmination, right? So you're losing out in the Fulmination stacks from Chain Lightning, which are helping you build towards Earthquake, which also feels pretty bad. This is a pretty good healing ability, but I don't really feel like as a DPS spec. I mean, it's kind of nice as a Resto Shaman maybe, but as a DPS spec, you want to be using it mostly for damage. So I feel like this one right now is underwhelming. Assuming though that they tune it up, let's be fair, Blizzard, let's assume they're going to buff this a lot so that this is going to feel like a nice, beefy, chunky ability, doing good damage. I think then it could be pretty okay. Just like, imagine it is uber chain lightning in AoE. Going to feel great in AoE. In single target, it's pretty underwhelming. You're going to use it to heal in single target, but at least it has that usefulness. So really good AoE ability, and in single target fights, at least it can be a really good AoE heal, which is kind of nifty. So yeah, I think it's okay. It's only okay, not great. Yeah. Next up, we have the Necrolords, and this one is very interesting. So their signature ability is Fleshcraft. It's a 2-minute cooldown, 4-second channel. You channel to form a shield of flesh and bone over 4 seconds that prevents damage equal to 20% of your maximum health. And this shield actually lasts for 2 minutes. Now, if you channel near enemies, near corpses, you can form a shield up to 50% of your maximum health. One of the, I think, the fun things about this is that you do have the Conduit, which makes your Earth Elemental give you up to 40% bonus maximum health. So if you combo the two of those together, you can get a really huge shield. Yeah, I think this one's pretty good. I mean, definitely the downside is that as an Elemental Shaman, you are quite low on mobility. You're quite low on mobility, so this is tough because, again, you have to stand still for 4 seconds. So, like, if you're using this between packs and Mythic Plus, for example, on like a mage, it's not too bad. I can channel Fleshcraft on a mage, and then I can just, like, blink after my party, and I catch up pretty quick, like, towards the next pack. As the Elemental Shaman, this feels a little bit more punishing. On the other hand, though, Elemental Shaman does really lack in defensive cooldowns. It does lack in them a good bit, and this is an extra defensive cooldown, which could be very potent. So, one to keep an eye on for sure. Then the Covenant ability is very cool. This is called Primordial Wave. Primordial Wave. This has a 45-second cooldown, and it has a 1.5 second cast time, 40-yard range. For Elemental, you blast your target with a Primordial Wave, doing 65% spell power shadow damage, and apply Flame Shock to an enemy. You can also cast it on an ally, I think, to heal them and apply Riptide. But you're probably not going to want to do that, right? You're going to want to use it to apply Flame Shock. But then the cool thing is your next Lava Burst will also hit all targets affected by your Flame Shock. Oh, this is just awesome, right? So you're instantly seeing lots of synergies here. Number one, in big AoE, my Fire Elemental, he makes Flame Shocks last longer, right? And the Flame Shocks tick faster. That's kind of nice. But more importantly, I can get up Flame Shock on more targets with my Fire Elemental. Primordial Wave again, I'm struggling by default to get Flame Shock on multiple targets. Primordial Wave is another way to apply Flame Shock, so I can get it up on more targets. That is also really good. I mean, you also have the Surge of Power talent, where when you consume 6 stacks of Fulmination, your Flame Shock is going to apply to 2 targets nearby. So you can start to see the potential for just spreading Flame Shock on many more targets now than you would get by default with just your basic core rotation. And then the really cool bit, your next Lava Burst hitting all targets affected by your Flame Shock. Like, you put that stuff together, and you're going to do like this mega Lava Burst that's going to hit, you know, you could hit 3, 4, 5 enemies with this thing. Like, oh my god, this is so good. It's so dirty. So nice. Like, so that's just badass. It's super cool. Like, your Lava Burst does a ton of damage right now. It is your, you know, biggest source of damage by far in single target. Being able to apply that in cleave then becomes insane. Does this generate stacks of Fulmination? Because Lava Burst now generates stacks of Fulmination. I'm not sure. But again, potentially, like, if this potentially could, you potentially could go from 0 Fulmination, you know, fire Lava Bursts at 4 targets, generate 4, and then have those Lava Bursts overload with your Mastery and generate another 4 Fulmination, maybe? And that, again, would be insane. So I'm feeling super pumped about this one. And then the Potency Conduit for this one is called Tumbling Waves. Primordial Wave has a 20% chance to not incur its cooldown, and this goes up to a 40% chance not to incur its cooldown. Again, this is even extra dirty for Ele Shaman. You get that reset? Like, you get that reset? So you already have your normal Flame Shocks up. You Primordial Wave the first guy, get a Flame Shock on him, then you fire off the Lava Burst and AoE. You have your reset then, so you fire another Primordial Wave, get even another target affected by that Flame Shock, and then fire an even bigger cleaving Lava Burst. Oh, so good. That is so good. In single target, not good. Again, this is the problem. In single target, it's just a more potent way. It's just a harder hitting Flame Shock application every 45 seconds, which is underwhelming. So that's the big downside here, is this is in single target, really bad, and the Conduit doesn't help that. But whenever there's multiple targets, this is going to feel really good. So I suspect that the downside of being terrible in single target is probably going to be worth it, just for how satisfying this ability is going to be with your with just your AoE and your cleave gameplay. That's my thoughts on that. Really nice one. And then finally we have the Night Fae. Their signature ability is Soul Shape. You turn into a Vulpin, teleporting 15 yards forward and increasing your movement speed by 50%. This lasts for 12 seconds. You can reactivate the button every 4 seconds to, again, get another 15-yard teleport while this is up. And this has a 1.5 minute cooldown. So, again, fantastic for Ele Shaman. You're a very slow spec, so having some mobility is really good. This is a lot of burst mobility. It's like Uber Ghost Wolf. Ghost Wolf, but much better. You are Spirit Fox, and it's better. So this one's going to feel fantastic in every form of content for the Shaman. And then the Covenant ability, this one is a bit not as good. It's called Fey Transfusion. You transfer the life force of up to 4 enemies in the targeted area, doing 50% spell power or so. I don't know. You're going to do some damage to them, nature damage, to each enemy over 3 seconds. And then you can press the button again within 20 seconds to release 25% of all the damage from Fey Transfusion, healing up to 8 allies near yourself. So, okay. Relatively straightforward. You do a big 3-second channel. It's going to do damage to enemies in the area. Press the thing again, and it's going to do some healing to your team. The conduit for this is called Essential Extraction. It makes Fey Transfusion do 10% more damage and channel 10% faster. This goes up to 30% faster. So with the conduit, which you're almost definitely going to want, I suspect, it will channel in about 2 seconds. I think it's okay. I mean, it's relatively straightforward. The issue with this one is I would probably just rather have the Vesper Totem, which I press it down, it's instant cast, it's 1 GCD, and it just does its thing. I don't really have to worry about it. With Fey Transfusion, you have to stand still, you have to channel it, so, I mean, that's a big thing for being kicked. Being kicked in PvP. If you have to move out of something in PvE, that's obviously potentially awkward. Obviously, it's hitting up to 4 enemies as well, so this also has a problem, which nearly all of these Covenant abilities have for the Shaman, which is that they're good in AoE, but they're pretty underwhelming in single target. So that's another big problem. Nowhere near as good in single target. And then, of course, it's kind of like some of the power is going to be baked into the fact that it does guaranteed healing. It's kind of like Vesper Totem has the same issue as well, actually. You know, it does do healing. So it's not going to do as much damage as a pure damage Covenant ability, because they have to balance it for the fact that it does do that healing as well. I don't know. I think it's okay. You know, it's going to be functional. It's going to be a decent AoE damage channel, and you can pop it to heal your team, and you can delay that heal a little bit. You know, you can delay that heal a little bit and pop it after a damage window. So I think it's okay. Not as exciting as the other ones, I would say, for me, though. Not as exciting as the other ones. But yeah, there you go. That is Faith Transfusion. All right, guys, and that is the Elemental Shaman. They're all the parts of it on the Shadowlands beta. Well, how's it playing? How does it feel? I think it's there's good things and there's bad things here, but to me, by far the funniest thing is that for a spec that has received not one but 2 reworks on the beta here, it plays almost the exact same as it did in BFA, which is just that tickles me. I have to say that really does tickle me. But yeah, like Fulmination, it's very similar to Maelstrom, in my opinion. It does have a downside, I think, that as a buff, like, okay, it's not going to make much of a difference to those of us that are using weak auras, but for, like, you know, your average player, for your normal player, I think removing the Maelstrom bar and putting it into the buffs for Fulmination makes it much less clear. In fact, as far as I'm aware, that was the reason they created Maelstrom in the first place, was to make that stuff more clear. So that's kind of a step backwards. I think Fulmination, though, there's a couple of things in there that work really well. So I think it flows well in AoE. It definitely, I think the Chain Lightning into Earthquake, that feels good. That flows well. And I also really like that Lava Burst is tied into Fulmination now. In fact, it seems bizarre to look back and to think that Lava Burst didn't interact with Maelstrom. Like, that just seems so strange. It doesn't make any sense. So it's good to see that is fixed. I also really like how it ties into your mastery. I think that's really positive, that your mastery now feels really impactful in terms of Fulmination generation. You know, when you Fulmination generation, but when you get those overloads, like you see, like you have the visual coolness of an extra Chain Lightning popping out, which is freaking awesome. But now it also feels very impactful in terms of the gameplay, again, particularly in AoE. The biggest problem with Fulmination right now, zero question, is single target. It feels awful. Like the tuning is just way off, I think. It just does so little damage in single target that it doesn't feel good. It feels like I'm going to press Earthshock and I'm going to consume my Fulmination. Why am I going to do this? Because it's slightly better than filling in with Lightning Bolt right now. It's slightly more damage, and that's the only reason I'm doing it. I'm not doing it because it's particularly good or particularly cool. That's the baseline stuff. Like, yes, you can prop it up a bit with talents and stuff, but and with some legendaries, but you shouldn't need to have to do that. It should feel good by default. My opinion on this, if you want, and also, oh, by the way, yeah, the Flame Shock stuff, that feels pretty rough. That's one thing for sure that I didn't enjoy as the Ellie Shaman. It feels stressful to multi-dot with Flame Shock. Why does it feel so stressful? It shouldn't feel that stressful. I just didn't enjoy that. I'd rather see them just, you know, okay, if they want to keep the cooldown on Flame Shock, which they seem committed to, I'd like to see them increase the cooldown. I should be able to comfortably, I feel, maintain Flame Shock on 3 targets. That feels good to me. It feels weird to be stressed about trying to maintain it on 3, in my opinion. For Fulmination, again, I want to try to give feedback here. I want to try to give lots of feedback because I feel like the Ellie Shaman is still very much under development. And who knows, maybe Blizzard will see this video and maybe I can be of some help, because I mean, I want to see Ellie Shaman come back and be more relevant. I think nearly everyone wants to see them come back and be more relevant. They saw some uses like funnel damage in Orgazoa and stuff, for example, in BFA, but you know, in Mythic Plus they haven't seen much play, and in Raids they haven't seen much play. You know, it's been a class that's been, you know, very underrepresented in BFA. I'd love to see them come back in Shadowlands. I really would. I think Ellie Shaman is a super cool visually class. I'd love to see them more. So yeah, that's why I'm giving this feedback. But I would suggest perhaps to tie Fulmination in and make it feel a bit better. I would like to see them. This is maybe a bit crazy, but I think you take Lava Burst and you double down on it generating Fulmination, but just lower Lava Burst damage. Make Lava Burst do less damage, but make it generate more Fulmination stacks. And then make using Fulmination with Earthshock do a lot more damage, so that you still do the same amount of damage in single target, but it'd be more tied into generating Fulmination. And your Lava Burst procs still feel really good, and using Lava Burst still feels really good. Not because it's doing crazy damage, like 30% of your damage in single target, but because it is giving you more of that Fulmination. It's speeding up your rotation. It feels snappy, and I think that would be nice. It would also tie in well to multi-target, so that using your Lava Burst in multi-target would feel more meaningful, because it would really propel you very quickly to getting more earthquakes out, and that's going to feel really good, I think, because again, earthquake generation with chain lightning now is a little bit slower than it was in BFA in against like 5 targets. It's a little bit slower, so that would be my feedback. Like, I'd just be curious to see how that would play. I think it would play a little bit better. You know, just they have to do something to make fulmination feel better in single target. And yeah, I think that would be the next logical step to the changes they put in my opinion. Let me know what you think on that one. But yeah, the biggest issue I feel for the Ele Shaman though, like this is a pretty big issue for them, and this again bothered me, and I know that it would bother me even more if I was going into raids, is for a caster that has mail armor and a shield, you just feel very squishy. And you feel very immobile compared to, I mean, like the mage is the standout comparison. Like with a mage, you've got blink, you've got your barriers, you've got ice block, they've got invisibility, they've got alter time and mirror image now as additional defenses and movement things. Like as a mage, I feel like you have so many tools to you know, move around the fight and to deal with mechanics and stuff like that. On the Ele Shaman, like, okay, you've got conduits that are going to help. I think the conduits definitely help, but nonetheless, and at the same time, I still feel like, generally speaking, as that Ele Shaman, you feel very squishy. Like you just, you know, by default, you just have Astral Shift. Your mobility, again, it was great to get Spirit Walker's Grace baseline. Like that's awesome. But nonetheless, your mobility still really suffers. So I think that feels bad as the Ele Shaman. I also feel like your utility isn't the best. One really nice thing, we're going to look at enhancement tomorrow, but enhancement, they gave enhancement Windrush Totem. Sorry, not Windrush, Wind Fury Totem. And that, I think, was sort of the key piece that was needed, I think, to make Enhancement Shaman feel a lot better, that you're bringing a really good buff to your party or to your raid that feels substantial. That seemed really good. Ele Shaman really does lack that. It's like, and again, it's an issue that some other specs face, like Monk is the same, like Windwalker Monk, is that the utility that you bring, all the other specs in your class bring it anyway. Like the other specs bring Earth Elemental, the other specs bring Capacitor Totem, and I mean, like there's lots of specs that AoE stuns. The other specs bring Tremor Totem. It's like, yes, you do bring some kind of nice utility, some unique utility, even with the Tremor Totem. Windrush Totem is awesome, but like the other Shaman specs already bring that stuff. And like then there's other classes that bring AoE stuns. There's other classes that bring movement speed buffs for your team. Like all the Druid specs now have Stampeding Roar, for example. So I just feel like, you know, the question is, why bring an Ele Shaman to a raid? Why play Ele Shaman in a raid? What are you doing that feels cool? What are you doing that makes you feel powerful? And I still think that despite these 2 reworks, I think that stuff still feels quite lacking. Okay, you're going to have the funnel damage, like against Orgazoa and VFA, that was cool. You still have, you know, funnel damage is still kind of your thing, and you could do, you know, good AoE damage when stuff is stacked up, but I don't know. I don't know if it's enough to stand out from the pack. I don't know if it's enough. Like, again, Enhancement Shaman getting Wind Fury Totem, I feel was the extra bit they needed to feel cool. I'd like to see something sort of like that come in for the Ele Shaman. You know, like whatever, Sky Fury Totem, like something. It doesn't have to do too much. It doesn't have to be crazy now. But, you know, just have a little extra something to feel like, okay, oh, yeah, we get an Ele Shaman to the party. Oh, that's really cool. Because, again, like, you know, this is the thing. You might already have, like, if Wind Fury Totem's really good, you might have an Enhancement Shaman in the party already. Resto Shaman's a really good healer for raids. So, in the raid, you know, is Ele Shaman going to fit in? I don't know. It's not as bad in Mythic Plus, I guess. You have more, like, your utility is less likely to be shared, so it can feel more unique, and it's going to feel a bit better there. But, yeah, I don't know. That's just one concern that I have with Ele Shaman. So, on the whole, how's it looking? Oh, actually, one thing, before I sum up, I also feel like their Covenant abilities are okay, but they're all very much the same. Like, nearly all of their Covenant abilities are just, it does AoE damage and also probably AoE healing. Like Vesper Totem, AoE damage, AoE heal. Fade Transfusion, AoE damage in the channel and AoE heal. Chain Harvest is, you can choose. Do you want to do AoE damage or you could do an AoE heal? I mean, the Necrolord is the only one that's different, and that one is actually interesting by far. Like, that's unique, but yeah, there's not too much interesting or there's not much variety in the Shaman Covenant abilities, so that is sort of disappointing. Though I guess the signature abilities feel really good for you because they give you survivability and they give you mobility, both of which are really big weaknesses for your kit. So you're gonna feel a lot better with those. But yeah, Yeah, I mean, like, in summary, how's Ellie Shaman looking? I mean, honestly, it plays pretty much the same as BFA. It plays pretty much the same. There's a lot of issues with stuff not quite being finished yet. Like, I feel like the tuning with Fulmination is still way off. I think there's a lot of talents which just don't work properly with this new Fulmination system. They just don't integrate properly, so that needs another look. So I'm really expecting a second pass here on the second rework for the Ellie Shaman to kind of bring things together and smooth them out and hopefully leave the spec feeling pretty good. Again, though, it's very, very similar to BFA. It really hasn't got any particular new strengths, I don't think. It's doing pretty much the same things that it did before. It's just their core rotation flows ever so slightly differently. And I think that is kind of a problem for the Ellie Shaman. You know, I think it feels a little bit bad, actually, to me. You know, it's a fun spec to play. It is. It's a fun spec, and it looks cool. But at the same time, it's like, can you recommend this spec? Is this one you want to look at for Shadowlands? And the issue is you're going, well, Ellie Shaman just didn't see much play for BFA. It didn't see much play at all. And if it's almost entirely the same, that just feels bad. You kind of feel like it should have got a little bit of extra love. You know, that's what it feels like. And especially considering that there are specs that got love. Like, you know, the Warrior DPS specs got extra stuff. They're better. You know, Death Knights got Anti-Magic Zone. They are just better. You've got lots of specs that are just better from their BFA counterparts. They've been improved. The stuff you're getting, it's not great. I mean, Spirit Walker's Grace is nice for some mobility casting. Chain Heal, I don't know, like, maybe. Yeah, it's just... I'm not sure about this one, guys. I'm not sure about this one. I mean, it's still, if you're gonna play the spec, it's still fun. It still plays pretty fun. If you like Ellie Shaman and BFA, you're still gonna like it. But I'm not sure if Shadowlands is looking to be all that kind. I'll leave it at that, guys. We'll see. We'll take a second look when they hopefully do another update on this spec. But for now, that is the Ellie Shaman. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.